of Assessment and Learning in Knowledge Spaces for the district's flexible learning program. Dr. Beasley.
Mr. Johnson, members of the board, Mr. Thurman, this item is in support of Towers High School. Please note that I've asked the principal to be here in support of this item. This item is a purchase in light of the comprehensive bridge strategy to align federal resources with the instructional needs of some of our most at-risk students. Towers High School has gone through some fundamental changes since the appointment of Dr. Simpson by our superintendent in the month of July. Several things that we would like to note is that Towers, in addition to the academic improvements, which I have observed myself on 2 occasions, Towers has implemented a hands-on Towers where they have invited in over 100 volunteers to participate in the beautification of the school. The principal has been instrumental in ensuring a change in culture with the red carpet welcome, where he's welcoming students back onto the campus and the community. They have established a change in culture through the initiative called the Titan Way. The principal has been instrumental in hiring, at this point, 50% of the staff being male. They started the school year fully staffed, unlike previous years. He has been instrumental in reestablishing partnerships with the local churches and other businesses that support the school. His use of social media to communicate with the stakeholders has been refreshing to the community, and he continues with a series of speakers and professional learning activities to support the teachers. The purchase of the ALEX software will support the principal's decision to provide additional instruction in the subject of mathematics during increased learning time. You should note that increased learning time adds an additional 45 minutes to the school day for the students at Towers High School. This software is also being used in our flexible learning program, which occurs at our priority and focus schools. Focus schools, of course, are schools that have a large achievement difference in performance between subgroups, and the priority schools are identified as the lowest performing schools, or the 5% of the lowest performing schools within the state of Georgia. This item again will support the instructional program. It is a bridge initiative strategy. It is a school's choice. In other words, the feeder schools may not necessarily participate in this resource. It is requested that the Board of Education approve the renewal of the ALEX from the ALEX Corporation and the related professional learning to not exceed the amount of $144,520.
Is there any discussion? Mr. Mayfield?
Yes. My question had to do with the chart that came with the supporting documents with this, and the performance that's documented here. And I guess the core question is looking at the correlation between the student time online and their ending knowledge. Do we have resources to actually engage students? Because there seems to be a higher correlation. If students get online, they seem to do better. And so my question is, in terms of student engagement of actually getting online, when you see the ones that are not getting online, if you will, is there a component to this process or to the Bridge Initiative that actually creates incentives or does something to intervene to try to beef up the numbers?
Thank you for the question. The component is the leadership of the school. As you can tell in the item, we have placed in here a minimum expectation of time spent. The intention was, as we looked at the data, we saw that there were some schools above the average time and there were many below the average time. So we established the minimum expectation, and this is the first year we've established the minimum expectation with the intention of all schools reaching that minimum expectation, thereby causing the average to increase. So we will increase the average time, therefore will increase the likelihood of success.
Okay. And the other question is, I guess, related, because in one of your responses you indicated that the placement, that there's a 90% accuracy of the assessment tool getting it right, but that intervention strategy is really contingent on the student being placed in the right place, I guess as a recommendation of the instructors or the teachers.
That is correct.
Right. Is there a gap there, in your opinion? And do we have do we have the professional development resources to help close that gap if there is one?
Well, that's a good question. If there's a gap, we would have to probably delve a little deeper to see if we believe that the teachers feel like they're really placing the students appropriately. You should be aware that when a teacher makes a decision to place a student in a course, that teacher is looking at various indicators. They're looking at prior CRCT or EOCT data. They're looking at current progress on the standards in that class, or they're looking at feedback from another teacher or prior teacher. We can work with the principals to see if there is an opportunity there to ensure that the students are appropriately placed. I would anticipate that a student is probably appropriately placed if we see that the growth is really occurring based upon the time he or she is spending in the program.
Exactly, and that was where my question ultimately was going, was whether or not we have enough information to correlate accurate placement and the number of hours. In other words, if students are not accurately placed, does that result in them ultimately not spending enough time on it because they don't really get it?
Well, I don't know if that would result in not spending enough time, but I would imagine that if they're not accurately placed, that their level of success would not be as significant as students who are accurately placed.
Okay, thanks.
Dr. Marley?
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Beasley. When we're looking at the program, what I'm thinking about is most certainly when we have someone who is great at their craft, no matter how much and how great Dr. Simpson is, we have to provide the tools for that person to be able to carry out that craft. And looking at Towers and the insurmountable odds that they've gone through, and our children who've had to suffer because of what they've gone through, looking at a program like this is very important. And we do have to remember that as educators, there are various indices that have to be taken into consideration when we're looking at where gaps are, where gaps might not be, and what all this decides student academic success. And so this is only a drop in the bucket of many other indices that we have to begin to look at, and the correlation between what happens at home, what happens at school, where the teacher fits. And we cannot expect that our teachers are going to be magic wanders, because if they did, we probably wouldn't need to be here. They could do it on their own and wouldn't need anybody to lead them. But the reality is that we have to consider the fact that there are many aspects that we have to take into consideration as we look at these programs. And we're looking at an area at Towers which was pretty much almost but forgotten. And when I went over there, and some of the things that I've seen, is almost like it was a turn back in hand of the clock of hand. And so when we think about that, we've got to do everything we can to make sure that there's no school in the county of DeKalb that is a forgotten school, and that there are no children that are left behind. And I'm not talking about the old No Child Left Behind, because there were many children left behind. I'm talking about current 2013, doing what we need to do in order to ensure that proper services are provided, proper materials are provided, and proper funding is provided so that we can make sure that these things take place. And Dr. Simpson has done an amazing job in the few months, and I thank the superintendent for his willingness, but for his ability to see what was needed and make the changes that needed to be done at Towers in order to ensure that our children are successful academically.
Mr. Orson?
Dr. Beasley, how are you today?
I'm well, sir. Thank you.
I just have a question and a comment. One was, you talked about under the school improvement grant to provide 300 hours of increased learning time, and I got part of it's by adding 45 minutes a day to the school day, which gives us about 120 of the hours. And I just want to understand better where the additional instructional learning time hours also come. Is that from the self-work, or?
That would be the self. The tool allows students to not only engage at school, but they can go home, library, public library, and also log in. So we would expect, and Ms. Dr. Simpson has shared, that he would expect every student to not only spend time on the campus engaged in the use of the tool, but to take advantage of their time away from the campus to also participate in the tool.
And then related to that, I'm assuming we're monitoring each individual student, and we had a discussion earlier, which is a prevalent problem. It's not limited to Towers, about access. You know, we know that there are some inequities in access. And do we have built in here, or beyond this, some strategies? I know you mentioned, I just heard you mention very well about public libraries, but are we looking at other strategies to increase access for those students who might not otherwise have it available?
Well, I can always defer to the principal, but I would say that as a district, as we increase access to programs like this, we must continue to have the conversations about the devices that our students need to have, whether at school or be issued to take home with them. The grants, of course, allow for purchases of devices. Whether Dr. Simpson makes the decision to purchase additional devices is a campus decision. But that's a large conversation that we need to have as a district about what type of devices will we continue to support as we move to these electronic or digital resource, or the expanded use of digital resources.
Right. Okay. And then third is just a comment, and I want to express my appreciation from when you had presented another topic about your adding here about the evaluation metrics and performance goals. I mean, I appreciate your taking it to heart. I think that's really important. It gives us some guideposts, and I think it'll equip us then to really measure and for you to come back and report on how we're doing. And I think I just want to thank you for doing that. So.
Mr. McMahon, followed by Dr. Carter.
Dr. Beasley, and I second the thank you on the metrics and performance goals. Similar as we try to listen to our stakeholders and our you listen also, and so does the administration. Thank you, Superintendent Thurman, on your leadership. If you don't mind me digging into the weeds right quick on the metrics. If I'm reading this right, the correlation between average number of hours and average point gain is 0.74. If I'm reading that right, understanding it, for every hour I put in, I'll get 0.74 maybe of a higher score. Is that kind of correct? So if I put in 10 hours, I'd get 7.4 points higher? Is that what that sentence is saying?
No, sir, that is not what that is saying. The correlation basically determines the strength of a relationship between two variables. The two variables being that of time and outcome, points gained. Correlation can be between 0 and 1, inclusive of 1. 0 being no correlation at all, no relationship at all exists. 1 being a 100% direct relationship. A 0.74 correlation basically means you have a very strong relationship between the amount of time and the points gained for a student.
Like 75% chance or whatever.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just trying to get the, if they spend 6.5 hours, and this is on an annual basis?
That was for this program,
basis?
this time was for the summer.
Right.
So they spent on an average, every student for that month, it was about 20 days, they spent an average of 6.5. If you look at the data, some students went well above 6.5 and some were below.
Average. And so 6.5, that's on accumulation of 20 days?
That was within the 20 days in which the program was used.
Okay.
From, I believe it was June 20th until about July 20th.
I greatly appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Dr. Carter.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Beasley and Dr. Simpson, I'm excited about this program being implemented at Towers. Dug into it, read all of the details, looked at the schools that already had to implement it based on need and needs improvement. I'm anticipating success. And so my question is, how do we then encourage those feeder schools where these young people are going to be migrating from to Towers to take advantage of something like this? What is it that you might need from us to help that?
Well, I think your support to approve this item will be a step in the right direction.
Sure.
And once we get the approval of this item,
Look at the
we
next
will
item.
go back to the feeder schools and basically share that your students will be landing on Towers' campus, which is using this product, and we will provide support and funding for their schools to also use this product. So I believe that your approval will be the impetus for a very fruitful conversation with those principals.
This goes through June?
Well, actually, the flexible learning program has already started. They've already started using it. Towers High School is probably in the process of starting to use it, if not. This item requires approval because once I put one budget together with the other budget, I realized it exceeded $100,000, and we wanted to make sure the district was covered related to policy DJE. It will go throughout the year. As a matter of fact, once they have access, they can use it until the end of the software license. So it may require a renewal. So it can be used throughout the school year and throughout the summer.
That's what I wanted to make sure, is that it would be
I'm
available
sorry
in
for
the
going
summer.
around the mountain to answer that question.
That's okay. Thank you so much.
Dr. Marley?
Thank you so much, Dr. Beasley. One of the things I want to say is that I'm excited about this, and if we were to look at the superintendent's bridge initiative and look at the parent engagement strategies that we're putting in place, then we will understand how important this program is. The other thing is we have to understand that learning does not take place in a silo. It is not going to just happen at school. It has to happen at home also. So part of that is that engagement piece that the superintendent has put together as far as the bridge initiative and making sure that we bridge what is going on at school, what is going on at home. What I love about this program and what I love about what's being done at Towers and many other schools and what Dr. Simpson is doing is the fact that we're trying to bridge. I think what is taking place in education and why we're so far behind in the American educational system is the fact is that we try to educate our children and we forget that there's a home involved. And so what this says is that we want to make sure something is taking place at school, but at the same time it's taking place at home. There has to be a carryover, because if there's no carryover, then we have a halt in the learning process. So if we were to go back and look at the superintendent's bridge initiative, look at the parent engagement, and this is November is parent engagement month. A part of that is being able to pull those schools together, pull the homes together, and being able to say we're going to take this back and pull it all together. But the other piece is, remember, through SACS and what they're looking for, here's more opportunity for us to be able to look at technology. It's all wrapped up into one. And how can we look at it and not see how important it is if we're going to talk about success for our boys and our girls?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Marley.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Superintendent?
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen of the board. I think we would be remiss if we did not hear his name has been mentioned on several occasions, but we're all excited by the leadership of Dr. Simpson and principals all over the district who are rallying to the cause to really improve academic opportunities for our students. And Mr. Chairman, if you would, if you don't mind, I'd like for Dr. Simpson to weigh in on this discussion because you're at the center of it, actually.
Good afternoon. Members of the board, certainly the superintendent, Dr. Johnson. But I want to express my appreciation and thanks just for your support, because obviously it could not be done without you. This is certainly an additional resource for us to be able to do what we do. There's obviously a paradigm shift at a school like Towers. That begins with making the students feel confident about learning and making sure and ensuring that education is a means to their success. And I can't say that my predecessors or any of those prior to me were able to accomplish that. But we have to establish and have established a day and time in which learning is going to take place at Towers High School. With that, we had to build on the foundation, and that foundation was initially just created with discipline and order. Before we could even begin with curriculum, before we can even begin with academic success, we had to establish the foundation for education. And that's just discipline and safety and maintaining order so that we can engage the students, engage the teachers in the process of what learning and teaching is all about. So this is just going to provide us a flexible or some flexibility and obviously non-traditional means for our students to become involved outside and or away. All of our students come to school with smartphones. We have to take advantage and utilize the technology in which they have, and utilizing that because we understand that parents believe and understand that teaching and learning is a little bit different because we have to educate them that it is different. And in utilizing those new means of technology, whether it be ALEC and some other creative means, we have to capture any and all the opportunities for our students to learn. And I'll have to say honestly, at this point, it's taking place. That paradigm shift and the confidence that we see with the students coming and entering the building every single day, that they're coming into the school with the willingness and the understanding and the belief and the value that there is a means and an importance and that education is a means to their success. So I want to thank you all certainly for your opportunity, for your time, your investment, and just being there to extend yourselves just as a part of the community, a part of what we're trying to do at Towers and our feeder schools. And I'll close with just this. You mentioned something about the feeder schools. While that's important, I have to say that in the past or historically, the most academically successful students at Bethune Middle School never made it to Towers High School. So in order to be successful, truly, you have to have a farm system. But I truly believe that as a principal and as the leader of that school, I have to give a parent or parents a reason to want to bring their children to Towers High School. So that has begun. We started that process, and I hope and believe that as we continue to build this relationship with the feeders, that they now believe and understand that there's a reason to bring their children to Towers High School. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Simpson. With that in mind, is there any opposition to placing this item on the consent agenda? Hearing none, it will be placed on the consent agenda. Dr. Simpson. Item number 5, Teach Town. Dr. Howell.
Dr. Johnson, Mr. Thurman, members of the board, item C5, Teach Town, is an instructional software and teacher-led program for students identified on the autism spectrum or with intellectual or developmental disabilities. This will allow us to receive 500 licenses and 150 teacher kits, as well as training and implementation support. The formal request is requested that the Board of Education approve the purchase of Teach Town Basics and Teach Town Social Skills in the amount of $453,745,066, paid for from Race to the Top federal funds.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Mr. Coleman.
Dr. Howell, I just wanted to ask a quick clarifying question because I know this is the first year it's being paid for with Race to the Top, but you all have a plan essentially for how you'd pay for this moving forward if we judge the program successful. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, correct. We're taking advantage of having those Race to the Top funds this year. Otherwise, we would be using our IDEA funds, approximately $18 million for that. So if it's fully implemented and showing that it's making progress on the students' IEP goals, we will look to support it using IDEA federal funds next year.
Mr. Orson.
Dr. Howell, just a quick comment and question. I noticed you had some analysis in here about improvements from the Georgia DOE, both in communication skills and adaptive skills, and I appreciate you reported out that there's some inconsistency based on the methodologies and so forth, and that's sort of one of the questions. And I think what I'd love to see if it's possible. I know it's not in here now, but I think this is a very worthwhile program. If at some interim stage it might be possible, as you're beginning to implement this program, to then begin, as we did with the ALEX program, to create some benchmarks for ourselves and for any of these curriculum-driven programs, because I think it's important. It's hard for us to evaluate where we are and where we're going to if we don't have a set of metrics that we're at least obtaining. And we know that in every case we may not obtain them, and that often there's reasonable rationale, but at least we'll have some common understanding. And so I know it's not here now, but I'd appreciate it if at some point in the future you could come back to us with some metrics around this, and on a going forward basis, Superintendent Thurman, if we could begin to incorporate that as one of the basics for the programs that curriculum instruction brings to us.
Certainly. With this particular program, as you know, it's an implementation year, so we'll be able to obtain that baseline data, and it'll be a little different than programs supporting general education because they're individualized goals, but we will be able to look at the baseline and be able to provide metrics as their progress on their IEP goals.
No further questions. Is there any opposition to placing this item on the consent agenda? Seeing none, this item will be placed on the consent agenda. Bid number 14-138 for catalog discount.
Yes, item C6, the catalog discount, is a routine item for a bid solicitation for catalogs to support athletic, sports, and physical education equipments and supplies to guarantee that schools making purchases from the catalogs are able to obtain the best prices possible. So a committee of 50 school representatives responded to the bidders, and have identified 5 catalogs. So it's requested that the Board of Education approve the bid contract for catalog discount, athletic, sports, and physical education and supplies, to authorize the DeKalb County School District to purchase equipment and supplies from the vendors not to exceed $100,000. If a purchase is $100,000 or more, an agenda item will be presented to the Board of Education for consideration and approval.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, is there any opposition to placing this item on the consent agenda? Seeing none, this item will be placed on the consent agenda. Fleet Services. Mr. Wilkins.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Superintendent, board members. I'd like to present item numbers C7, the intergovernmental agreement for fuel. This is with respect to compressed natural gas. We have 2 CNG school buses within our fleet, and would like to present for your approval a IGA with the county so that we can refuel these particular buses. This particular agreement allows for a fixed price for approximately 5 years at the cost of $2.10 per gallon equivalent. And this particular agreement has been legally reviewed and approved by the board attorney. So the requested action is that it's recommended that the Board of Education grant the superintendent the authorization to sign an intergovernmental agreement for the provision of fuel services between DeKalb County, Georgia, and DeKalb County School District. Subject to your questions, Mr. Chairman, I request that this item be placed on the consent agenda.
Is there any discussion, Mr. Mayfield?
Yeah, just a couple of questions, Mr. Wilkins, and thanks for the answers that you gave prior to this. In your answers, you indicated that the CNG is actually less expensive than other fuels. And my question has to do with whether or not there's a cost difference and differential that justifies accelerating the number of conversions or buses that we have, bus purchases that we have that can use natural gas.
That's a good question, Mr. Mayfield. The answer is that we have to make that assessment as we go along. Okay. Part of the initiative here is that we were granted some support from the state to purchase these vehicles, so that helped in the acquisition. This is an alternative fuel technology, so the buses are actually more expensive than a diesel. Yeah. And there's about a $41,000 differential between a diesel bus and a CNG bus. Right. The other factor that we have to consider is the availability of the refueling stations. These 2 buses actually serve the Southwest DeKalb High School cluster and the Cedar Grove cluster, so they stay within the district. As the refueling stations become expanded across this region, that would allow us more opportunities, of course, to use these buses, not just throughout the district, but outside the district for field trips, athletic events, so on and so forth. Right. So again, we just have to manage it as we go along and make that assessment. Right.
And the follow-up question to that actually is related to your response, and that was whether or not we are collaborating or entertain the idea of collaborating either with MARTA or other districts to sort of help facilitate or even provide input to the industry in terms of where to place these stations throughout the region, so that we can take advantage of more opportunities to purchase new buses that would take advantage of these cost differentials in fuel.
I'll take that suggestion under advisement with our colleagues.
Mr. Orson.
Mr. Wilkins, just a quick question, and I think this is a great idea. I know it taps in, no pun intended, into the initiative of the county to really reclaim a lot of the natural gas that's created at their landfills. And we had talked about earlier, another time, that I thought there is some idea in the plan of the county to add additional stations throughout the county, and I was wondering if you were able to find out any information on that.
I don't have that information, Mr. Orson, but I'll look into it.
No further questions. Is there any opposition to placing this item on the consent agenda? Hearing none, this item will be placed on the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I just want
Mr.
to say in
Superintendent.
relation to the item you all just passed, this is a major initiative of our acting CEO, Mr. Lee May, and other commissioners, and I think this will help us do what one of the things you've made as a major priority is to build relationships with county government. And I think this is an excellent example of the school district and the county government working together to serve our common taxpayers and constituents. And I want to thank the board for their vote on this.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent, for your leadership. SPLOST 3 project, Mr. Wilkins.
Mr. Chairman, the next request is for approval for ADA improvements at Chapel Hill Elementary School, Clifton Elementary School, Meadowview Elementary School, Miller Grove Middle School, and Salem Middle School for a lump sum construction contract to make ADA improvements at these schools. These include the renovation of parking lot spaces, main entrance, student restrooms, and staff restrooms so that they are ADA compliant. The requested action is that it is recommended that the board approve the award to Construction Works, Inc., the most responsive and responsible offerer whose proposal is the most advantageous to the board based on the evaluation factors for construction services for the ADA improvement project for the lump sum amount of $699,000. Mr. Chairman.
Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, is there any opposition to placing this item on the consent agenda? Hearing none, this item will be placed on the consent agenda. SPLOST 4 project.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This request is for the design, build, demolition services for the former Shamley Middle School, Tilson Elementary School, and Hooper Alexander Elementary School. The scope of work for this project includes the complete demolition of the facility, less the multi-purpose buildings, removal of all demolition items, as well as the leveling of the ground. The requested action is that it is recommended that the board approve the award to DBABS Construction Atlanta Demolition, the most responsive and responsible offerer, whose proposal is the most advantageous to the board based on the evaluation factors for the design, build, demolition service at the former Shamley Middle School, Tilson Elementary School, and Hooper Alexander Elementary School for the lump sum amount of $738,000, $738,781. Thank you.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, this item.
Just real quick.
I'm sorry, Mr. McMahon.
Sorry, Dr. Chairman. Mr. Wilkins, DBABS, there were other bidders on the project. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Mann. There were four others.
Okay, I just saw the score sheet back there with the evaluation, and DBABS was the only one that had any numerical values, even though there were other companies on there. But I was just asking. I'm good.
Okay.
Any opposition to placing this item on the consent agenda? Hearing none, this item will be placed on the consent agenda. SPLOST 4 project design.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This particular request is for the design, build, demolition services for Fernbank Elementary School and Peachcrest Elementary School. Again, we are recommending that this be awarded to Atlanta Demolition. What I want to point out is that this is just for Fernbank Elementary School and Peachcrest Elementary School. Gresham Park will be delayed until further notice. So the requested action is that the Board of Education approve the award to Atlanta Demolition, the most responsive and responsible offerer, whose proposal is the most advantageous based on evaluation factors for design, build, demolition services at Fernbank Elementary School and Peachcrest Elementary School in the lump sum amount of $826,146. Mr. Chairman.
Is there any discussion? Mr. Orson?
Quick question. I'm curious. I noticed that for C9, the winning bid was from DBABS Construction / Atlanta Demolition, and this one is Atlanta Demolition. Is it the same Atlanta Demolition, or are they operating a joint venture for C9 and not in C10?
It's two different entities, Mr. Marshall,
Okay.
but I will provide some information back to the
Okay, just sharing one name. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Coleman?
going to use this to just broach a broader topic. I think the last two we've considered demolition of properties. The one we're considering now, I know, we have a designated purpose for both of those properties because we're going to rebuild on those sites. I think my broader push, and this is less a question than just a suggestion for something that I'd love to see covered in future meetings. I know Mr. Mayfield has brought up before the idea of just going through what's our plan for all of our vacant properties around the system, vacant lease properties, I would say, how we're using them, what we're thinking about future use, and why we would leave them vacant if there's not some future use plan, because I understand there can be good reason for doing that. It's just something I'd love to see us address. I think the previous couple of properties, that a couple of them may not have a future use plan right now, or one of them may not. It'd be great to see us revisit, the entire list and just think through, what operations has planned for those and why they're staying vacant, if they are going to stay vacant, what the rationale for those are.
Dr. Irwin?
Mr. Wilkins, I see that one of our properties that you and I have discussed is not on the list, Gresham Elementary.
That's correct.
Could you expand on that a little bit for me?
Well, we've delayed the demolition of that former school pending our assessment due to the community meeting that was recently held.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Mr. Campbell? No further questions. Is there any opposition to placing this item on the consent agenda? Hearing none, this item will be placed on the consent agenda. School nutritional services.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This request is for an extension of RFP bid number 13-20 for sanitation services and materials, and we're asking for an extension to our current vendor, which is Portion Pack Chemical Corporation, pending the completion of an RFP. Portion Pack provides kitchen services and materials to our 123 kitchen sites throughout the district. The requested action is that the Board of Education approve the extension of RFP bid number 13-20 for sanitation services and materials to Portion Pack Chemical Corporation, located at 400 North Ashland Avenue, Chicago, Illinois, 60622. Mr. Chairman.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, is there any opposition to placing this item on the consent agenda? Hearing none, this item will be placed on the consent agenda. Property, boiler, and machinery and museum floater insurance renewal.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Currently, DCSD insures over $2.34 billion of district-owned property. The renewal program provides protection for losses up to $300 million per single occurrence, subject to a $100,000 deductible. Coverage is essentially unchanged from previous years. Lexington Chartist Insurance, the insurer, has quoted a renewal rate at $644 below the rate of the expiring policy. The insurance coverage request was marketed to 15 separate insurers who either declined coverage or were uncompetitive. Requested action. It is requested that the Board of Education waive Board of Education Policy DJE 7, as it does not contemplate the current market requirement to secure brokerage agreements to negotiate and acquire quotations for new or continuing insurance coverage, and to authorize the payment of the renewal premium for property, boiler and machinery, museum float, or terrorism insurance coverages for the policy year November 5th, 2013 through November 4th, 2014 to Lexington Chartist Insurance in an amount not to exceed $766,626.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, is there any opposition to placing this item on the consent agenda? Seeing none, this item will be placed on the consent agenda. Item number 13, in order to address some of the SAC's concerns relative to governance policy, the board would like to address that by developing a policy. And what I would like to do at this time, I would like to assign Dr. Carter, Dr. Irwin, Mr. McMahon, to an ad hoc committee to address the policy. In your package, you have been given information as information to guide you in this process, to start as an initial part of the process for informational purposes. But before we leave that subject, and if you would, you could bring us a report of where you are or a policy by our next board meeting. That's, naturally, if you did, we would have to waive the policy, but that is your recommendation, the policy, the ad hoc committee, you would bring us that information back at our next meeting. But prior to that time, I would like for any board members who are desirous of making any comments relative to this policy development to make your comments at this time. Mr. Coleman.
I'm sure there are all kinds of parliamentary ramifications of this, but I think my request would be, I think this is a great opportunity to have the ad hoc committee work on it. I appreciate all the work that went into the creation of this initial placeholder of a policy, because it actually looks really good, I think. What I would love to see, even if we have to waive the formal month-long waiting period requirement at the next board meeting, is if it is possible to post this publicly in some way, even just this initial version, so that we can get input from the community, so that even if we have to waive the policy for a month-long waiting period for adoption, we've gotten some feedback from the community on the proposal in addition to the ad hoc committee. I'd like to see that happen on the website or somewhere, even if it's informal, because I think that's important for our governance policies to have a little oversight by the community ahead of time.
Mr. Orson?
Chairman Johnson, I think, this is a great start. I think it is important, particularly with what we have gone through in DeKalb, that we're really thoughtful about the creation of governance policy and that we look for the development of a policy that both reflects our specific needs but also looks to really best practices. I mean, I think there are varying ideas what those best practices are, but I think it's important that it is representative of how we think this system should be governed, but also recognizes what the role of the various players are in the system, including the school board in particular and members of the school board. I think we're in a position to really establish something that is really innovative and leading ideas. I think sometimes we're not always as mindful. We tend to create policies just to say we have a policy, but I think we have a real opportunity here to establish leadership in the development of this policy. So I am also appreciative that we're taking the time to do this, because I think that comports with good governance, that we're taking the time to ensure that the public has a chance to review what we're proposing and to have input, because I think that also comports with good governance. And I'm excited at the prospect of us developing something that really can be a standard for not only for our system but for other systems.
Hearing any other comments? Thank you for your comments. At this time, this will not be a consent agenda item. We'll just take it from here and move forward. It will not be. We'll remove it from the consent agenda at our business meeting. I think, Margaret, you directed me to have a break. Would you like a break now, or you're good now? Okay. All right. At this time, I call for a motion to adjourn to an executive session for the purpose of discussing student appeals. Moved by Dr. Carter, second by Mr. Campbell. All in favor, let me know by a show of hands. It's unanimous. We will adjourn to executive session.
Mr. Johnson, before you all go, I misspoke, Mr. McMahon. I told you correlation is between 0 and 1. It's -1 and 1, because you can have an inverse relationship. I just wanted to make that correction. The teacher in me wouldn't let you all leave without making that correction.
Go back and get some statistical analysis courses or something.
Thank you, Dr.